Hey guys, tonight we drift into the serene Heian Court where candlelight glows, silk whispers on polished floors, and incense lingers in the air. Amid beauty and ceremony lies Lady Teishi's hidden heart, her love woven in silence. Step softly into this world of fleeting glances and imagine surviving 12 layers of silk in summer heat. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, feel free to share your location and the time where you are listening tonight in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk gently along the wooden corridors, the scent of cedar rising faintly from beams that have held centuries of quiet footsteps. The court is hushed at this hour, and only the faint song of crickets threads through the night. You feel the stillness settle on your shoulders like a soft blanket. The Heian period, spanning from the years 794 to 1185, is remembered as a golden age of Japanese culture. Literature, poetry, art, and ceremony flourished, and the capital of Heian, Kyoto, what you now know as Kyoto, stood as the beating heart of elegance and refinement. You imagine how every lantern cast halos of light along the eaves of palaces. Beneath the shimmering elegance of the Heian Court lay rules as unyielding as stone, shaping every step of the nobles who moved within its walls. Lady Teishi, graceful among women of her time, carried within her heart a quiet longing she could not voice. She drifted through polished corridors in robes heavy with color and fragrance, her silence concealing a story forbidden to be spoken. Painted screens adorned the chambers, each scene carefully chosen to echo the rhythm of the season's blossoms in spring. Fiery maples in autumn, reminders that beauty was fleeting, like whispered love that vanished before dawn. Incense curled through the air, subtle fragrances layered as carefully as the silk robes themselves, making each encounter feel ceremonial, even in the absence of words. Born to a house where ambition was constant, Lady Teishi lived beneath the weight of politics. In this world, love was seldom the measure of marriage. Alliances guided destiny, and daughters were given as offerings to secure power. Teishi's place in the palace was no accident. It was the fulfillment of her family's design. You pause in thought, watching the moonlight slip through paper screens. The world feels delicate, as though a sudden breath might ripple it apart. In this fragility, Lady Teishi's secret affection found its own silent rhythm, pulsing beneath layers of obligation. Her heart whispered in the spaces where silence lingered longest. The Heian capital was designed on a grid, inspired by the model of Chinese tank cities. Streets stretched in careful symmetry, though today many of those paths are hidden under modern Kyoto. You picture courtiers moving gracefully, across them in ox-drawn carriages, the creak of wheels softened by straw mats. And yet, not every palace from those times has been found. Archaeologists have puzzled over records that describe smaller buildings of Heian Kyoto that simply vanished. No foundation stones, no fragments, only faint traces in ancient texts. It is as if some structures dissolved into the mists of memory. You imagine one such lost palace, its walls painted, its gardens lined with stones polished smooth. Perhaps Lady Teishi once visited such a place, her footsteps echoing softly in rooms now swallowed by time. The thought is both haunting and calming, like listening to a melody you almost recognize but cannot place. Silence deepens as night advances. You hear the faint crackle of a lantern wick, its glow reflecting gently across sliding doors. The rhythm of the evening court slowed long before this hour, and now only servants move softly in distant halls. The city outside has grown quiet, leaving the palace suspended in calm. When you glance up, you notice how stars above Kyoto were often noted in court diaries. Nobles of the Heian era loved to record the beauty of the night sky. You picture them seated on polished verandas, looking out with poems forming silently in their minds. The act was both leisure and ritual. Lady Teishi herself was familiar with poetry. It was the language of the court, the way feelings found expression without breaking rules. To exchange a verse was to reveal a fragment of the heart. In those fragments, she allowed her own secret to exist, though never fully spoken. Your mind drifts, as though floating with incense smoke. You recall that Heian courtiers layered silk robes in colors echoing the seasons, deep reds, gentle greens, pale whites. The combinations themselves spoke messages, subtle hints of personality and mood. To wear such robes was to carry meaning with every fold. The elegance was extraordinary, though you suspect the laundry would have been overwhelming. You chuckle quietly at the thought, and then settle back into the story's calm rhythm. Every detail of the court seems measured to slow time itself, to let each moment rest a little longer before slipping away. Outside the palace walls, the Kamo River carried the reflection of lanterns downstream. People would gather on its banks during festivals, but tonight it flows quietly under the moon. The sound of water folding over stones is soothing, a steady backdrop to thoughts that are too delicate to be spoken aloud. You realize that within these halls, every heartbeat, every whispered word, became part of a larger tapestry, woven of duty and beauty. Lady Teishi moved gracefully within it, but somewhere beneath the silk and ceremony, her secret desire pulsed like the faint glow of a hidden ember. The night grows heavier, and you sense the stillness of centuries pressing gently around you. Time slows until it feels almost suspended, as though you have entered a place where history lingers but never fades. In this suspension, the story of Lady Teishi waits to unfold, soft as moonlight and deep as silence. And so, with lanterns dimming, with corridors stretching endlessly quiet, you let yourself sink deeper into this world. It is a world where beauty hides sorrow, where silence conceals love, and where history breathes slowly through wood and paper. You rest here, ready to follow the gentle path that lies ahead. You step into the quiet imagination of Kyoto's ancient streets, where lanterns glow in long rows, their light bending around wooden beams and painted eaves. The evening air is warm, filled with the fragrance of pine smoke and distant rice fields. You feel your body relax as the rhythm of the night takes hold. Lanterns were more than simple light. In Heian, Kyoto, they guided processions, lined temple paths, and carried blessings written in ink. The city moved according to these soft flames. You can almost hear the faint creak of bamboo frames as they sway gently in the summer breeze. Kyoto's streets would awaken each year with the Gion Matsuri, a grand festival born in the 9th century as a ritual to ward off plagues. At first it was solemn, a prayer against unseen dangers, yet slowly it grew into one of the grandest celebrations of the era. You picture ox carts rolling slowly, decorated with silk banners. Crowds of nobles and townspeople gathered, their robes brushing together like waves upon a shore. Musicians played drums and flutes, and lanterns carried their glow far into the distance. This festival, born from worry, became a living thread of joy. It brightened the summer streets of Kyoto long after fear had passed. Among those lanterns walked Lady Teishi, though not as freely as the crowds. Her role was shaped by the rules of the court, binding her movements to expectation. She might have watched from a shaded balcony, her gaze following the lines of light winding through the city, her heart caught between duty and longing. The light of lanterns seemed to speak in whispers. They danced upon polished wood and gilded paper fans. They painted every shadow with warmth, yet Lady Teishi's heart remained quiet, hidden behind the layers of ceremony. She was present in the brightness, but lived in the silence between its flickers. Historical records describe these lanterns as lasting only a few hours, yet some accounts speak of lamps that burned all night without dimming. Whether fueled by unseen hands or made from forgotten craft, they became mysteries in themselves. Their glow lingered far longer than fire should allow. You imagine walking slowly beneath such lanterns. The air is thick with quiet laughter, the clinking of sake cups, and the faraway sound of drums. The lights never waver. They seem to float upon the night, steady as stars suspended just above the streets. Your steps feel soft beneath them. For Lady Teishi, such nights may have been bittersweet. Surrounded by color and sound, she carried a secret too delicate for display. Her affection, forbidden within the confines of palace law, lived quietly while the city burned bright with celebration. Lanterns revealed everything, yet her heart remained hidden in shadows. The streets of Heian Kyoto followed careful order, yet festivals allowed them to transform. Merchants lined paths with fragrant sweets and woven goods. Children laughed, running through lantern light, while monks chanted prayers. The city became a theater, every corner a stage of sound, fragrance, and glow. You pause to think how the human heart moves differently through such spaces. While others delighted in noise, Lady Teishi might have found herself lost in thought. The sound of laughter contrasted with the hush of her own chamber, and the lanterns that others admired only deepened her sense of distance. There is something timeless in that contrast, for you too have walked through crowded places while carrying a quiet mind. It is like being both part of a river and yet a stone resting in its bed. You feel the motion around you, but remain still inside. Some diaries from the Heian period describe the act of strolling under lanterns as a favored pastime. Courtiers spoke of the way the glow softened faces, making every expression seem kinder. They believed lantern light revealed a truer beauty than sunlight, gentler and less harsh. Perhaps this is why Lady Teishi felt both drawn and distanced. In lantern light, her longing might have seemed closer, almost possible, yet the rituals of court reminded her of boundaries. To reach beyond them was to risk scandal, and scandal was a storm no silk robe could soften. The mystery of lanterns that burned all night adds another layer to this vision. You imagine one such flame, steady through the hours, untouched by wind or time. It becomes a symbol, an echo of a heart that refuses to fade, even when it should. Such a light is both strange and comforting. The streets would have been filled with wooden floats, their tall structures adorned with fabrics and flowers. Musicians sat upon them, playing melodies that carried down narrow lanes. The lanterns tied to these floats trembled slightly, casting shadows that moved like gentle waves across the faces of the crowd. In the dim glow, you imagine Lady Teishi standing still, a fan lifted gently to veil her face. Such was custom, yet it concealed more than beauty. It guarded silence, longing, and restraint. Behind the painted folds, her gaze may have wandered towards something unseen, a fleeting memory or fragile hope, destined never to emerge into the world she inhabited. The thought slows your breathing. You feel the contrast between the joyous streets and the silence of her inner world. It is not sorrow exactly, but a tenderness, like the hush that follows a bell. The lanterns, glowing against the night, become mirrors of longing that shine even when unspoken. As you move deeper into the quiet streets, the steady rhythm of drums drifts away, leaving only the hush of night. Lanterns grow sparse, glowing faintly at shrines and doorways, their light trembling in the still air. Yet some flames, it is said, burned longer than they should, refusing to fade. These lingering lights became gentle mysteries, stories whispered of fires that defied the dark. In them, one might see the reflection of hidden hearts, carrying secret warmth, despite the silence that bound them soft beacons glowing quietly, reminding that even in shadows, love found a way to endure. You rest in that image, watching one lantern glow steadily in the night. Its flame is calm, neither wavering nor dimming, like a quiet truth waiting patiently. And as the night deepens, you feel the same calm enter you, steadying your breath, guiding you gently toward stillness. You step into the gardens of the Heian Palace, where gravel paths wind carefully between moss-covered stones, and moonlight lays a silver sheen over everything. The night is hushed, as if even the crickets have lowered their songs, so you may wander without disturbance. Each breath of air feels gentle, like silk brushing lightly against your skin. The gardens of the Heian nobility were designed not only for daylight admiration, but for moonlit reverie. Courtiers often gathered to practice tsukimi, the art of moon viewing. To sit under the night sky and watch the moon rise was considered both poetic and elegant, a way to mirror the heavens in the human heart. Lady Teishi may have joined such gatherings, her sleeves resting on lacquered armrests, her gaze lifted to the glowing disk above. You picture her surrounded by other nobles, yet her heart drifts elsewhere, carried on beams of light. The moon became not only a celestial body, but a secret witness to emotions too fragile for words. As you walk deeper into the garden, you notice lanterns spaced at intervals, their glow subdued so as not to dim the moon's radiance. Pools of water stretch quietly under willows, catching the reflection of the sky. The ripples fold and unfold, creating twin moons as though the heavens had doubled themselves for your gaze. The courtiers of the Heian period treated these nights with a reverence that might feel unusual now. They composed verses of waka poetry, trading them like whispered thoughts between friends or rivals. Each poem sought to capture the essence of the moment, a fleeting impression that would never be repeated exactly again. You pause beside a cluster of stones arranged in deliberate harmony. They are not random but carefully placed, a representation of mountains and valleys within a confined space. The garden becomes a universe in miniature, a place where the vastness of nature is folded gently into human design. In the distance, a faint melody seems to echo, perhaps a flute carried by the breeze, or perhaps only your imagination, weaving sound into stillness. You smile quietly at the thought, amused by how your mind fills silence with music, like a storyteller who cannot resist adding detail to an already perfect scene. Lady Teishi's heart might have stirred most during these evenings. When the court gathered to admire the moon, her own gaze was drawn not only to the heavens, but to the figure of one she secretly admired. Under the soft veil of night, a glance could last longer, a silence could feel fuller, and a hidden bond could quietly form. The mystery of the garden deepens with its flowers. Ancient tales speak of a blossom that bloomed only under moonlight. Its petals were said to shimmer faintly, as though woven of mist. At dawn, the flower vanished, leaving no trace of its existence. Whether myth or memory, it became a story that lingered. You imagine Lady Teishi walking slowly along a path, her silk robes brushing against the stones when she catches sight of this impossible bloom. Perhaps she leaned closer, her breath mingling with its faint fragrance. Perhaps it reminded her of her own love, beautiful, fleeting, and destined to disappear with the morning light. The moon itself was more than a light to the courtiers. It was a companion, a silent witness to human longing. Poems from the period often compared the moon to distant lovers, to dreams that could not be held, to the heart's restless tides. Lady Teishi, with her quiet yearning, must have found comfort in this shared symbolism. The garden's ponds glimmer softly, koi moving lazily beneath the surface. Their movements disturb the reflection of the moon, breaking it into shifting fragments. You watch how quickly the light reforms, as if wholeness is always possible, even after disruption. It is a calming thought, a reminder that peace often returns without effort. The faint fragrance of pine lingers, as if incense once placed at a shrine still drifts through the night. Time feels layered here, delicate as overlapping silk. You rest on a smooth stone bench, the garden pressing softly around you. Though bounded, it seems endless, a gentle illusion, reminding that even the smallest spaces can hold infinite vastness when the heart is open. In this stillness, you think of how Lady Teishi must have balanced the heavy expectations of court life with her own tender secret. By day she lived in ceremony. Each movement watched, each robe judged, each word weighed. By night, in gardens like this, her heart was free to wander beyond the rules, at least in thought. The moon overhead glows brighter, casting pale shadows that stretch long and thin across the gravel. They seem like brushstrokes of ink drawn over the earth, as if the night itself were painting poetry for those willing to look. You feel a quiet joy in noticing it, a reminder that beauty does not ask for attention, but rewards those who slow down. Perhaps the mysterious flower of legend did bloom here once, its petals shining faintly as Lady Teishi walked by. Or perhaps it was no more than the invention of a poet, eager to describe the feeling of seeing something so beautiful it must surely vanish by dawn. Either way, the story holds truth. Some wonders are meant only for the night. Your steps carry you further, but the garden seems endless, each turn revealing another view framed perfectly. Stones, water, plants, and moonlight weave together as though they rehearsed for centuries to present this exact moment to you. The harmony is so complete, you almost laugh at the thought of anyone calling it landscaping. The night grows deeper, and silence folds around the palace grounds. The moon sits high, steady, and luminous, while shadows grow softer. Lady Teishi's presence feels near, as if her quiet longing still lingers among the stones and petals. Her love, like the secret flower, lives in the memory of moonlight. As you leave the garden, you look back one last time. The moon rests over the rooftops, serene and patient, casting its glow over paths both remembered and forgotten. The night does not rush, and neither do you. You carry the calm of the garden with you, like a soft lantern in your chest. You find yourself in a quiet chamber, lit only by a few lanterns, whose flames lean gently when the evening breeze sneaks through thin paper screens. The room is still, yet its silence feels alive, as though words are waiting in the air. The floor smells faintly of sandalwood, polished smooth by countless years of footsteps and kneeling robes. In the Heian Court, marriages were rarely matters of the heart. They were carefully arranged by families seeking influence and stability. Alliances were made not through whispers of affection, but through the exchange of daughters, each match a thread woven into the tapestry of politics. Love was considered a private indulgence, one often hidden behind the heavy curtains of duty. Lady Teishi lived within this framework, her own position shaped by such strategies. She was admired for her beauty, her intelligence, and her grace, yet she was also bound by expectations larger than herself. Her public life was a display of loyalty to her clan, her private life an intricate dance of silence and longing. Among the court, poetry was the one language where private truths could be gently revealed. Waka verses 31 syllables arranged in a precise rhythm carried emotions too delicate for ordinary speech. Courtiers exchanged them as gifts, as responses, as subtle gestures that allowed feelings to breathe without fully breaking the rules of propriety. You imagine Lady Teishi seated by her writing table, her sleeves pooling like rivers of silk around her arms. A small brush rests between her fingers, its bristles soaked with ink as dark as midnight. She leans over a piece of paper, her hand moving slowly, shaping characters that conceal more than they reveal. The poem she writes is short, but in its brevity lies depth. Perhaps it speaks of moonlight falling on water, of a blossom drifting across the surface, of longing felt yet never claimed. To another, it might appear as a meditation on nature. To the one she loves, it carries the weight of her hidden heart. Some of the love poems collected in Menyushub, one of Japan's oldest anthologies, remain without identified authors. Scholars debate who might have written them, their voices lost to time. Could one of these anonymous verses be hers, tucked carefully into the folds of history, waiting to be read centuries later as a secret confession? You lean closer, picturing a verse in elegant brushstrokes, its ink softened by time, yet its emotion unbroken. The words seem to breathe across centuries, carrying whispers of a heart once unguarded. In the glow of a lone lantern, those feelings still linger, trembling softly, as if waiting to be heard again in the quiet. Her love was directed toward a courtier, a man whose presence lingered at the edges of her days. Their interactions were brief, shaped by ceremony, yet their hearts found ways to speak in silence. A glance exchanged when others looked away, a line of poetry left where only one would find it, a fan carrying words folded carefully between its ribs. The hush of the court made these exchanges more poignant. Every glance held the weight of secrecy, every word the risk of exposure. Yet in that risk lived intensity, like a flame that glows brighter when shielded from the wind. Their affection grew not in loud declarations, but in whispers that barely touched the air. You feel how this quiet love contrasts with the sprawling system of the court's polygamous households. Men of power often held multiple wives and concubines, their unions reflecting politics rather than passion. Against this backdrop, Lady Teishi's affection for one man became both delicate and dangerous, a rebellion of the heart, hidden beneath layers of silk and duty. The room grows softer as you linger in thought. You imagine her slipping a folded sheet of paper under a screen door, the ink still damp. The recipient finds it hours later, the brushwork delicate, the words layered with meaning. In this way, two souls converse without voices, weaving a dialogue invisible to the rest of the court. Writing was never just words, but a quiet confession. A brush pressed too firmly revealed unrest, while strokes drawn faintly hinted at hesitation. Each curve of ink carried a rhythm, a pulse that betrayed the writer's state of mind. To read such lines was to listen beyond language, to hear the tremor of another's heart echoing gently through paper, ink, and silence. The anonymity of certain waka poems in manuscript only deepens the sense of mystery. Who wrote them? Why were names omitted? Were they forgotten deliberately to protect reputations? Or were they simply lost in the passage of time? The absence of attribution leaves space for imagination, as though the poems themselves wished to remain secret. Lady Teishi's own verses may never be known with certainty, yet their possibility lingers. Perhaps they rest quietly in manuscripts, misattributed or unnoticed. Perhaps they have been lost altogether, carried away by fire, flood, or the slow erosion of time. Still, the thought of them persists, like an echo that refuses to fade. The chamber is hushed, and the candlelight flickers against painted screens of landscapes and cranes. Shadows stretch across the floor, shifting gently as the flames move. You hear the faint rustle of fabric as a sleeve is adjusted, the delicate scratch of a brush as it touches paper. Her heart is present in these sounds. Each stroke of ink is a step closer to confession, each word a risk wrapped in restraint. And yet, what greater act of tenderness than to write what cannot be spoken, to give silence a voice through poetry? The love she carried remained unacknowledged by the world outside her chamber. To others she was a wife, a consort, a symbol of alliance. To herself she was a woman with a quiet ember burning, one she dared not show yet could not extinguish. That ember glowed brightest when her brush touched paper. As you rest within this vision, you feel the calm of secrecy. It is not a calm born of emptiness, but of depth, the stillness of water that hides currents beneath. The room is still, yet the heart moves endlessly. Lady Teishi's whispers of affection continue to linger, carried not by sound, but by ink, by moonlight, and by the silence of centuries. The night unfolds with a softness that seems almost infinite. The corridors of the Heian Palace are quiet, their wooden floors cool beneath silk slippers, their shadows long and fluid beneath the wavering glow of oil lamps. Somewhere within these halls, a sound begins to breathe delicate, hesitant at first, then flowing like water, the gentle plucking of a Koto. The Koto, with its long body of polished wood and its strings stretched like silver across lacquer, was more than an instrument. It was a vessel of emotion, a bridge between the inner world and the outer one. Each note shimmered with unspoken meaning, each vibration lingering in the still air as though reluctant to fade. In the Heian Court, music was more than pastime. It was the soul of aristocratic life, woven through ceremonies, festivals, and hushed evenings alike. The solemn strains of gagaku, carried from China and Korea, yet reshaped in Japan, filled grand courtyards lit by torches, flutes, and drums, rising in ritual harmony to honor imperial grandeur. Yet beyond these stately occasions, music softened into intimacy. On quieter nights, Koto strings and gentle melodies drifted through chambers like moonlight upon a hidden garden, becoming less performance than whispered emotion. Here, refinement gave way to reflection, and each note carried both the dignity of tradition and the tender pulse of private longing. Lady Teishi cherished these gentler hours. When the court quieted, when ceremonial obligations retreated into memory, she found herself alone with her thoughts and her Koto. Sitting upon woven tatami mats, she let her hands drift across the strings, coaxing out sounds that seemed to belong not to the instrument, but to her heart itself. Each note was a whisper, each melody a confession. The music became her second language, one that spoke of longing too tender for words, of emotions too dangerous to write. While her waka poems carried veiled affection, her music bored in tones more fluid, more elusive. Anyone listening might only hear the grace of practice, but the one who understood would hear love hidden in every rising and falling phrase. There is a tale told in hushed voices of the Heian Court, a melody said to have been heard in the dead of night when no musician was near. Some spoke of an abandoned chamber where a Koto, untouched, sang softly as though played by invisible hands. The story has never been explained. Was it a trick of wind across the strings, or a memory left behind by the emotions of those who once played? Even today, no answer is certain. You linger with the image, an empty room, pale moonlight filtering through paper screens, the air heavy with stillness. Then, without warning, a note drifts upward, fragile as smoke, followed by another and another, until the song blooms in the dark. The sound is haunting yet tender, as though the instrument itself remembers the touch of its owner and longs to sing again. Lady Teishi's nights at the Koto carried this same ghostly intimacy. Her music was not for courtly display, not for competition or acclaim. It was for the moments when silence was too heavy, when the chambers felt like cages, when the weight of duty pressed too firmly upon her shoulders. Then the Koto became her release, the sound of her heart slipping between the rigid walls of tradition. Some nights she may have played melodies known from gagaku, reshaping their solemn tones into softer, more personal versions. Other nights she would let her fingers wander, creating songs that belonged only to her. Each vibration filled the chamber, mingling with the faint scent of incense and the cool air drifting in from moonlit gardens. Her secret affection, that forbidden love which grew quietly within her, found its way into these songs. The notes rose and fell like the rhythm of a hidden conversation. They echoed the brushstrokes of waka, but freer, less confined by structure. Music allowed her feelings to swell, fade, and return again, like waves on a shore no one else could see. The man who had captured her heart may never have heard her play directly, yet her music was shaped for him nonetheless. It was an offering that remained in the air, invisible and unacknowledged. Even unshared, it carried meaning. The act of playing itself became enough a way for her to keep her affection alive without breaking the fragile order of her world. In this, her music mirrored the life of the court. Gagaku was rigid, ceremonial, full of rules. Yet beneath it the Koto could speak with fluidity, improvisation, and longing. Publicly, duty prevailed. Privately, the heart whispered its quiet rebellion through strings. The palace itself seemed to listen. The wooden beams absorbed the notes, the tatami hushed them, the paper screens softened their edges. As her fingers moved, the sound spread out, becoming part of the very air she breathed. To sit within such a moment was to feel time slow, each second elongated by the resonance of strings. You, too, can rest inside this soundscape. Imagine lying back as the Koto hums around you, its tones light as falling petals. They drift over your thoughts, settle gently upon your shoulders, and dissolve into the stillness. The night no longer feels empty. It feels filled with something tender, almost imperceptible, yet deeply present. Even centuries later, the memory of these nights lingers. Historians debate the origins of certain melodies attributed to the Heian Court, uncertain who first composed them. Perhaps among these forgotten songs lies one of Lady Teishi's own, a tune she played alone, never recorded, yet somehow surviving in the echoes of tradition. Historians still debate whether these fragments belong to noble women of the court, some records suggest, leaving the question unresolved, suspended like an unanswered chord. And so, the gentle sound of the Koto carries across time. It is not a sound that shouts or insists. It does not demand attention. Instead, it flows quietly, as though content simply to exist, to linger at the edges of thought. For Lady Teishi, it was enough. For you, listening now through imagination, it is enough too. The night deepens. The lanterns burn lower, their flames small but steady. The Koto rests silent once more, but its resonance lingers in the air, like the echo of a heart too careful to speak aloud. The quiet murmur of the palace grows lighter as the night deepens, like a tide retreating from the shore. The faint echoes of Koto strings still linger, but now the atmosphere turns heavier, draped in layers of formality that seem as tangible as silk robes themselves. You find yourself walking through the long corridors of the Heian Court, where every step is measured, every gesture rehearsed, and every glance weighed against invisible rules. The Heian Court was not only a world of poetry and moonlight, it was also a theater of duty. Each noble family played its part with precision, their roles handed down like heirlooms. Above all, the Fujiwara clan exerted control through the careful weaving of ritual and marriage. Their daughters became consorts, their sons became regents, and through these threads of ceremony, they secured power that lasted for generations. Life within the Heian Court was a delicate web of expectation. For a woman of Lady Teishi's rank, freedom was scarce. Each gesture, each silence, carried meaning and consequence. Even the tilt of her fan in a poetry exchange was read like a line of verse, her existence confined to ritual and watchful eyes. The very walls seemed to absorb obligations, the sliding screens guarding tradition as much as space. Nothing escaped notice, and every whisper lingered in memory. Within this rigid order, Lady Teishi nurtured her forbidden affection like a fragile flame cupped from the wind. Though her marriage bound her to political duty, her heart leaned toward another path. Music seemed to echo her longing, its quiet notes binding her not only to courtly grace, but also to love that refused erasure. In her silence, the secret burned steadily, tender yet defiant, hidden beneath the weight of ceremony. The rituals of court life reinforced this tension. Daily ceremonies honored the emperor, the gods, and the unbroken lineage of power. At dawn, incense curled upward in sacred offerings. At dusk, prayers were recited with unwavering voices. In between, poetry contests, banquets, and official gatherings filled the hours. To the outside observer, this life was one of elegance and order, but beneath its smooth surface, the heart struggled quietly. It is said that within the journals of court ladies, one can find traces of secret affections, fragments of longing hidden between descriptions of ceremonies. Some pages speak of furtive glances, of waka poems slipped beneath doors, of emotions carried like contraband through narrow halls. Yet no one knows if these entries are truth or imagination. Were they confessions of real encounters, or were they exercises in literary longing? Historians still debate whether such encounters were real or symbolic. The uncertainty adds to the haze of the Heian world. It becomes difficult to separate fact from feeling, duty from desire, history from dream. Perhaps Lady Teishi herself blurred these lines, using poetry and music as vessels for emotions that could never be named directly. Perhaps her love existed only in fragments, scattered like autumn leaves across her writings, impossible to piece back together fully. In this uncertainty, you find a strange kind of peace. The ambiguity softens the edges of the story, allowing it to float gently rather than land heavily. Whether her love was consummated or only imagined matters less than the truth of her experience. She lived within bonds, and she carried a heart that longed beyond them. That longing is real, and it lingers across the centuries like a quiet echo. The Fujiwara clan's grip on power meant that duty was inescapable. They orchestrated alliances with the precision of musicians tuning their instruments. Marriages were arranged not for affection, but for influence. Every bride became part of a larger design, her personal happiness exchanged for the stability of a political order. Lady Teishi was no exception. She had to embody dignity, grace, and loyalty, while suppressing the private stirrings of her soul. Imagine the strain of such a life. Each morning, the rituals repeated, the garments adjusted, the expressions perfected. Each evening, the cycle reset. The days moved with ceremonial rhythm, as steady and unyielding as a drumbeat. Within this rhythm, her hidden love became like a counter-melody, soft, almost imperceptible, yet essential to her survival. In the palace archives, hidden journals hint at shadowed affairs, their truth forever uncertain. Were they dreams, symbolic exercises in courtly language, or confessions too fragile to voice aloud? The mystery endures, hovering between memory and imagination, just like Lady Teishi's heart. You picture her at a low desk, one candle casting soft light over her features. Her brush moves with care, recording weather, rituals, the faces of guests. Yet between these formal notes, whispers slip in an unguarded glance, a fleeting phrase that stirred her deeply. Real or imagined, only she knew, leaving the page to guard what her lips never spoke. To dwell in this uncertainty is to embrace the atmosphere of the Heian world itself, a place where dreams and reality overlapped, where ritual and emotion coexisted in fragile balance. The court was a stage, yet behind its screen panels, the human heart beat quietly, insisting on being felt. You walk slowly through the corridors in your mind. The scent of incense lingers. The faint rustle of robes brushes against silence. Every corner holds a memory of ritual, yet every shadow hints at something more. The air is heavy with formality, but also with longing. Lady Teishi, bound by duty, lived within these shadows. Her love was forbidden, not because it harmed others, but because it disrupted the script written for her. To love outside arrangement was to step beyond the choreography of court life. To love secretly was to reclaim a part of herself, even as she surrendered so much to duty. And so the palace remained divided, one world visible, one world hidden. The visible world glittered with ceremony, with elegance, with Fujiwara control. The hidden world whispered of emotions too tender to display, of connections too fragile to name. Lady Teishi lived between these worlds, balancing like a candle flame between still air and sudden draft. As you close your eyes, you feel the rhythm of this life, duty pressing like steady footsteps, love flickering like a heartbeat beneath. The two coexist, neither erasing the other. They remain, like music heard through a wall distant yet undeniable, soft yet unending. The sky lowers gently over Kyoto, and the first drops of spring rain begin to fall. You hear them tapping softly against the palace eaves, a rhythm so light it feels like the sigh of the season itself. The wooden corridors glisten as the moisture deepens their color, turning pale cedar into rich bronze. Every droplet lands with a subtle hush, folding the city into quiet contemplation. In Heian Kyoto, rain was never mere weather. It was poetry in motion, a veil of solitude and reflection. Murasaki Shikibu, in the tale of Genji, described rain as both barrier and bridge, a shifting curtain between hearts. Her words echo through centuries, reminding us how even the gentlest drizzle held meaning. Imagine Lady Teishi listening in silence, hearing more than sound, feeling rain as a language of its own. Under its touch, rooftops blurred, gardens softened, and pathways shimmered like threads of light. Within palace walls, such moments offered her a fragile freedom, a pause from ritual's weight. The rain loosened boundaries, softened silence, and spoke to her heart directly, unshaped by ceremony, unrestrained by rules. There is a legend whispered among old Kyoto families, telling of rains that carried souls. It was said that when a person died with unspoken sorrow, the skies would weep for them, releasing their essence as rain. Each droplet, delicate and fleeting, became a fragment of memory, washing down tiled roofs and into the earth. This belief gave rain an almost sacred weight, as though every shower was a visitation from unseen ancestors. You imagine Lady Teishi walking beneath such rain, feeling her own hidden grief mirrored back at her. The Heian nobility often wrote poetry about rainfall, finding in it endless metaphors. Sometimes the rain symbolized tears of longing. Sometimes it stood for renewal, sometimes for impermanence. When a gentle drizzle fell on a day of ceremony, courtiers compared it to silk threads unraveling from the heavens. When a sudden downpour arrived, they likened it to the beating of drums, echoing the uncertainty of human fate. Each drop was a message, and every listener interpreted it anew. Lady Teishi may have heard in the rain the echo of her own secrecy. Each droplet that traced down bamboo leaves could resemble the path of tears she never allowed others to see. To the world, she remained dignified, composed, and bound to her role. Within, her heart carried unspoken longing, like a jar sealed tightly with wax. The rain became the unspoken voice of her sorrow, crying where she could not. You walk through the garden in your mind, feeling the cool mist gather on your skin. The stepping stones are slick, and the moss glows richer under the rain. In a still pond, rings spread outward where drops touch the surface, widening and then vanishing. You think of how feelings ripple in similar ways, emotions that begin quietly within, extending outward until they dissolve into silence. In the tale of Genji, rain often marks moments of vulnerability. Lovers exchange poems as droplets fall, their words carrying double meanings. The rain provides cover, disguising footsteps, masking sighs. It is as though nature itself conspires to protect secrets, offering its own veil of privacy. For Lady Teishi, whose love remained forbidden, such cover must have felt like mercy. The rain could be both shield and companion, a reminder that even the sky kept confidences. And yet, not all rain is sorrow. The Heian poets also saw joy in its patterns. Gentle rains coaxed buds to bloom, filled streams, and refreshed weary earth. It was a sign of transition, a cleansing between seasons. Lady Teishi might have leaned into this gentler symbolism, seeing in the rainfall a promise that her own longing, too, would find renewal in some form, even if only within the realm of poetry. The mystery of rain carrying souls added another layer. If each droplet was a spirit, then a spring shower became a reunion of voices, a quiet assembly of the unseen. Lady Teishi, seated by the window, may have imagined them gathering, whispering their own tales, offering her silent company. Such imaginings blurred loneliness, reminding her that no one is truly alone beneath the rain. In the palace records, there are accounts of ceremonies interrupted by rain, yet never ruined by it. The courtiers adapted, writing verses about the weather's intrusion, transforming inconvenience into art. Rain was never only an obstacle. It was material for expression. You picture the courtiers holding sleeves above their heads, laughing softly as they scurried across wet verandas, then later composing elegant poems about the moment. Lady Teishi, too, may have taken her brush to paper, transforming drizzle into metaphor, her words drying the sorrow she could not voice aloud. When rain falls long into the night, it can alter your sense of time. The hours blur, the steady rhythm lulling the mind into drifting thought. You imagine Lady Teishi lying awake, listening to the endless patter, her mind wandering down hidden paths. The world outside was veiled, the court hushed, and in that privacy she could let her heart drift toward the one she loved. No one would know. The rain erased all evidence. You sit quietly, letting the thoughts settle, imagining the gentle rhythm around you. The sound is soft yet persistent, steady without insistence, like a drum that comforts rather than commands. Each drop draws you deeper into calm, a subtle pulse that eases the mind. The rain claims no owner, yet it touches all, flowing through centuries, connecting hearts and moments alike. In its quiet presence, you feel both stillness and gentle continuity, as if time itself has paused to breathe with you. In this way, the rain of Heian Kyoto continues to fall even now. It carries Murasaki's words, Lady Teishi's sighs, and countless unnamed sorrows into the present. You, too, receive it as you listen, allowing the rhythm to soften your own edges. The droplets slide down, carrying fragments of history, fragments of longing, fragments of love. Perhaps this is the truest power of rain. It dissolves boundaries. It blurs past and present, self and other, sorrow and comfort. It allows Lady Teishi's secret longing to mingle with your own quiet thoughts, washing everything into one shared pool of feeling. As the rain continues, you realize that some emotions are never bound by time. They fall again and again, as endlessly as the seasons. The palace of Heian Kyoto thrived not only on ritual and ceremony, but also on whispers and gestures. Beneath the elaborate layers of silk and the rigid order of courtly life, there existed a quieter world, woven out of poems, glances, and the faint rustle of paper. It was in this world that Lady Teishi found refuge, a world where a folded fan could hold more passion than a spoken confession. Among the Heian elite, the exchange of waka poems was not merely pastime, it was lifeblood. Waka carried thoughts that etiquette forbade, feelings that could never be uttered directly. These verses, carefully measured in 31 syllables, distilled longing, regret, and joy into subtle imagery. But more delicate still was the custom of inscribing these lines on the folds of a fan. Fans could be opened or closed, hidden against the body, or displayed with artful intent. They were, at once, tools of ceremony and messengers of the heart. Imagine Lady Teishi seated in her chamber, the glow of oil lamps painting soft shadows on her sleeves. Before her lies a fan of fine paper, stretched over slender bamboo ribs. The paper is pale, tinged with lavender, its surface awaiting words. She takes up her brush, dips it into ink as dark as midnight, and writes a waka. The characters curl like tender branches, each stroke deliberate, each pause between them heavy with unsaid meaning. When the ink dries, she folds the fan, hiding the poem within its pleats. To the unknowing eye, it is a mere accessory and elegant fan for stirring air. But for the one who receives it, it becomes a vessel of confession, a key to a secret world. The act of handing it over might be as simple as leaving it on a veranda railing or brushing it lightly into another's sleeve during a procession. So much risk in so small a gesture, so much daring in silence. The man who caught Lady Teishi's heart, a courtier with refined bearing and poetic skill, would understand at once. When he opened the fan in privacy, the characters unfurled like petals of a hidden flower. He would trace the strokes with his eyes, perhaps even bring the fan to his lips, as if tasting her presence in the ink itself. Then, with trembling anticipation, he would write his reply upon another fan, folding it closed once more. Their dialogue moved not through voices, but through the whisper of paper and the lingering warmth of ink. This manner of exchange made every meeting unnecessary, and yet made every absence unbearable. The fan became a substitute for presence, an extension of the soul. When Lady Teishi held a fan that carried his words, she held a fragment of him. The space between them was lessened, though the palace walls still stood unyielding. Historians tell us that fans were often perfumed before being exchanged. A faint trace of incense or crushed blossoms would cling to the paper, turning the poem into a sensory memory. In Kyoto, even now, some antique fans bear subtle aromas that have resisted time. Scholars puzzle over their endurance. How could a fragrance remain vivid after centuries? Some whisper that the scents are more than natural, that they are traces of emotion itself, infused so deeply into the fibers that they will never leave. Perhaps this is the mystery of which old tales speak, fans uncovered in archives, their paper still breathing an inexplicable fragrance. Some smell of plum blossoms, though no ink records such choice. Others carry a sweetness like rain-washed bamboo, impossible to explain. You imagine Lady Teishi's own fan, inscribed with longing, infused with the faint smoke of her chamber incense. Could it be that such fragrance, bound to hidden desire, still lingers in Kyoto's air? The secrecy of fan poetry heightened its intensity. A letter could be intercepted, a whispered word overheard, but a fan seemed ordinary, blending into daily life. Only when unfolded did its secret bloom. The risk lay not only in discovery, but in the vulnerability of inscription. Once written, the words could not be unsaid. Lady Teishi risked her reputation with every stroke, yet the need to express outweighed fear. In this ritual, affection became art. A poem was not only sentiment but performance, judged for elegance of imagery, refinement of metaphor. The Heian Court was merciless in its critique of verse. A clumsy poem might ruin a reputation, but to craft one so subtle, it disguised love as seasonal observation. That was brilliance. Lady Teishi's waka, no doubt, glowed with such refinement, appearing innocent to others, but blazing with meaning to the intended reader. Picture a spring gathering in the Heian Court. Lanterns sway gently, music drifts in solemn beauty, and laughter ripples across polished wooden floors. Lady Teishi stands among the nobles, her layered sleeves brushing against others as they pass. A fan slips from her hand, or perhaps she allows it to fall. A courtier retrieves it, bows, and lingers just a fraction longer than custom demands. To onlookers, it is nothing more than a courteous act, easily forgotten. Yet between them, the moment burns like a hidden spark. Later, in solitude, that same fan will open in her hands like a secret moonrise. There is something eternal in such rituals. Even today, the idea of words or feelings concealed within an ordinary object carries its own quiet magic. A folded fan, a sealed letter, a book resting unopened, each holds a world suspended in silence, waiting for release. For Lady Teishi, that anticipation was everything, the fragile space between obligation and longing. In her chamber, the brush moved softly, ink drying on paper, the fan closing with a sigh. To hold it was to cradle a heart distilled into 31 syllables of forbidden poetry. The rains outside would continue, the rituals of court would proceed, but within the folds of paper, a parallel world thrived. A world built not of decrees or alliances, but of longing and courage. In that world, Lady Teishi could live her truest self, if only for a moment, if only in ink. And when you imagine those antique fans still carrying mysterious fragrances, you realize that some secrets never fade. Desire, once written, seeps beyond time. What Lady Teishi risked and what she cherished may still linger in the fibers of paper, waiting for someone, centuries later, to unfold them and breathe in the truth of a forbidden love. As the day waned and shadows stretched long over Kyoto's quiet landscapes, Lady Teishi found herself drawn to a place beyond the palace gates. There, nestled in the stillness of Yuji, stood Byōdō-in, a temple that seemed to hover between heaven and earth. Built in the year 1052 by Fujiwara no Yorimichi, this temple had already become a symbol of spiritual devotion and quiet grandeur. Its Phoenix Hall, with wings outstretched in architectural grace, mirrored itself on the surface of a reflective pond. For Lady Teishi, it was not only a monument of faith, but also a sanctuary for her silent prayers. The late afternoon light bathed the temple in hues of amber and rose. Clouds drifted slowly above, casting gentle veils over the tiled rooftops, while the water below captured every shimmer and turn of the sky. The soft hum of cicadas lingered in the distance, blending with the occasional sound of bamboo rustling in the breeze. For a heart heavy with unspoken love and the chains of courtly obligation, this was a place of fragile solace that Byōdō-in had been built during an age when the end of the world, or Mappo, was widely feared. The people of the Heian Court believed that human virtue was waning, and so the creation of temples became a way of securing salvation. To stand within such sacred architecture was to stand at a threshold between despair and hope. Lady Teishi, though bound by the grandeur of her family name, felt in her own way the same yearning for redemption, not from sin, but from silence. The Phoenix Hall, or Hoodie, glowed as if alive in twilight. Its form resembled the outstretched wings of a celestial bird, poised to carry souls to the pure land of Amida Buddha. Lady Teishi would approach with reverence, her layered robes trailing softly over the stone path, each fold heavy yet graceful. The air was cool, scented faintly of moss and water lily, mingled with the faint smoke of incense drifting from within the hall. Inside, the great statue of Amida Buddha sat in luminous stillness. Carved with exquisite detail, its expression bore the serenity of infinite compassion. Records tell us that this statue was the work of Joku, the master sculptor of the Heian period, whose proportions redefined sacred art. Lady Teishi gazed upon it, her eyes lingering on the golden surface, watching as the fading daylight played upon its form. To her, it seemed less a statue than a living presence, calm and vast as the evening sky. There were tales told among the temple attendants' dailies of nights, when the Amida figure shone with an otherworldly radiance, casting beams that danced across the hall and spilled onto the waters outside. Some said the light was a sign of divine approval, a glimpse of the pure land itself breaking through the veil of the mortal world. Others whispered that it appeared only to those whose prayers were most sincere, as if the Buddha answered in rays of gold rather than words. Could Lady Teishi, kneeling upon the mat in silence, have glimpsed such a light? History offers no certainty, only fragments of rumor. Yet one may imagine her gazing upward, her heart aching with devotion and longing. Her prayer was not for power, nor for riches, nor even for freedom. It was simply for peace within a heart divided between duty and forbidden affection. As the evening deepened, the pond outside mirrored the heavens, turning a darker shade of indigo. Fireflies rose, their faint glows flickering among reeds like scattered stars brought near. Lady Teishi would step outside, her sleeves brushing against lantern posts, and pause by the water's edge. The reflection of the Phoenix Hall rippled gently, blurring into dreamlike shapes. Above, the first true stars began to pierce the fading light. The soundscape of twilight at Byōdō-in was a symphony of softness. Frogs croaked faintly in the distance, the breeze rustled willow branches, and the faint ring of a temple bell carried over water. Each tone lingered, dissolving into air as though reminding her of impermanence. The Heian world was obsessed with such notions mano no aware, the awareness of life's transience. And here, before the temple built in an age fearing its own decline, Lady Teishi felt that same delicate truth. She would think of her secret love, the one whose waka poems lay folded in her sleeves, whose fan she held as though it carried his very soul. In this temple's twilight, she could release her grief into the air, whispering through her heart what her lips dared not shape. The Buddha's calm presence absorbed it all without judgment, offering not an answer, but the serenity of being heard. Even centuries later, Byōdō-in remains a place of quiet astonishment. Travelers still speak of sunsets that set the Phoenix Hall aflame, as if heaven itself touches the earth. The temple is now a World Heritage Site, its image stamped upon coins, its beauty celebrated in countless scrolls and poems. Yet for Lady Teishi, it was not monument or symbol, but sanctuary. Each visit was a private pilgrimage, each twilight a chance to surrender, her unspoken longing into the folds of eternity. If the legends are to be believed, if the Amida statue truly did shine with supernatural light, perhaps Lady Teishi saw in that glow a reflection of her own hidden love. A love forbidden by custom, yet pure in its sincerity, burning quietly like the glow of fireflies, fleeting yet eternal in memory, when the final trace of daylight disappeared beyond the hills. The temple dissolved into the stillness of night. Lanterns glimmered faintly along the walkways, and the pond became a dark mirror of stars. Lady Teishi would rise slowly, her robes heavy but her heart somewhat lighter, as though the act of being here had eased her burden. She would return to the palace, carrying the hush of Byōdō-in within her like a secret flame, ready to face again the silence of the court. The temple's quiet became her quiet. The Buddha's light became her hope. And twilight, in its slow descent, became the bridge between her sorrow and her strength. Within the dim chambers of the Heian Court, the air was rarely bare. It was always touched by the breath of incense, weaving its invisible threads through corridors of polished wood and behind, screens painted with landscapes of clouds and cranes. The fragrance clung to silken robes, seeped into scrolls, and lingered in hair long after braziers had cooled. To breathe in this scented world was to step deeper into a rhythm of life where aroma carried meaning as much as poetry or music. Art of incense, known as Koto, blossomed during the Heian period. Unlike simple burning for ritual, this was an elevated practice, cultivated with the same refinement as calligraphy or court music. Courtiers gathered in intimate circles to play incense games, passing delicate cups of smoke as though they were verses of waka. Each fragrance carried subtle notes, woody, floral, or earthy, and participants were asked to name them, to associate them with seasons, or to compose poems inspired by their ephemeral presence. The smoke curled upward, fragile as thought, vanishing even as it was perceived. Lady Teishi moved easily in this scented world. To her, incense was not only a pastime, but a private language of memory. Certain fragrances recalled evenings of festival lights. Others stirred recollections of long journeys or whispered confessions. She knew that in this courtly life, where words were measured and silences deep, fragrance could say what voices could not. The story of incense stretched far beyond Kyoto's gardens. Much of it arrived on ships from distant lands, carried along the Silk Road to China, and then across waters to Japan. Sandalwood, a loose wood, and cloves mingled with native resins, becoming treasures as prized as fine silks or rare pigments. Each stick, each fragment of wood, was a vessel of history. To burn, it was to join countless others who had once paused, inhaled, and drifted into memory. And yet, within this culture of refined aromas, there were mysteries. Chronicles mention a fragrance known as ranhu, now lost to time. Descriptions of its qualities are vague. Some say it was sweet as plum blossoms in early spring. Others claim it carried a sharpness like winter frost. It appears in records only fleetingly, as though it slipped quickly out of history's grasp. Scholars have tried to reconstruct its nature, but like a forgotten melody, it lingers only as suggestion. Lady Teishi herself may have once encountered it, perhaps in a private chamber where smoke wound through lamplight, stirring her heart in ways no other scent could. Imagine her, seated within a quiet pavilion, the shoshi screens filtering moonlight into pale geometries. Before her, a small censer glows faintly, releasing ribbons of smoke that spiral upward and vanish. Each inhalation brings with it a tide of memory. Perhaps she recalls the night of a secret poem, passed to her within the folds of a fan, the ink still wet, the words more fragrant than the smoke itself. Incense, in such moments, became the keeper of her forbidden's love, holding it gently in its embrace. The Heian Court cherished this interplay of sense and spirit. To inhale incense was to contemplate impermanence. Just as smoke rose and disappeared, so too did love, joy, sorrow, and all things of this fragile world. Yet in its brief existence, the fragrance carried depth beyond measure. One could smile at the memory of a childhood summer, or ache at the thought of a letter never sent. Incense was less about smell than about what it awakened within. For Lady Teishi, who bore the weight of political marriages and carefully arranged appearances, incense was one of the few companions who did not judge. The braziers whispered no gossip. The smoke carried no betrayal. It simply rose, curled, and disappeared, offering comfort in its quiet honesty. She would sit for long stretches, the sleeves of her robe pooled around her, watching the smoke as though it carried her unspoken words toward the ceiling beams dot in the wider world. Incense ceremonies became marks of refinement. Gentle competitions, known as kumiko, asked players to identify blends by scent, much like tasting fine teas. Nobles delighted in their ability to distinguish subtle differences, each correct guess greeted with laughter soft as the chime of wind bells. Records tell of courtiers comparing the fragrance of a blend to scenes from nature, like pine needles beneath morning frost, or like blossoms falling onto a stream. To speak thus was to demonstrate not only a keen nose, but also a cultivated heart. Lady Teishi's own associations were private and tender. The fragrance of a loosewood reminded her of his handwriting, steady and graceful. The faint sweetness of clove stirred recollections of watching rain blur lanterns along palace corridors. Each note carried her closer to him, though no one could know. When she leaned closer to the censer and allowed the smoke to brush her face, it was as though his presence enfolded her, unseen yet deeply felt. Centuries later, the tradition of Koto would be codified into strict schools with rules and classifications. But in Teishi's time, it remained fluid, intimate, half ritual and half dream. Perhaps this openness allowed the heart to wander more freely, to find within fragrance a mirror of secret longing. The lost incense, Ranhu drifts still through imagination. Perhaps its delicate scent once clung to Lady Teishi's robes, settling in folds as she moved through palace halls, knelt in prayer, or lingered where pale moonlight streamed through windows. Its mystery deepens her story, echoing her unspoken love, fragile, fleeting, and unnamed. As twilight softened the palace, candlelight warmed the chambers and incense wove through the air. Lady Teishi's presence was felt not in footsteps but in fragrance, a subtle veil of memory trailing behind her. To others, it seemed refinement. To her, it was comfort, a gentle cloak of warmth where silence alone could not reach. The smoke thinned, the embers cooled, and the chamber returned to stillness. Yet for Lady Teishi, the fragrance remained within, as though her very breath carried it forward into the night. In that lingering sweetness, she found a fleeting refuge, a gentle reminder that even in silence, love could endure unseen, unspoken, but never entirely lost. The air grows crisp, and the Heian Court softens into the warm, muted tones of autumn. Corridors open onto gardens where maples blaze in scarlet and gold, their leaves drifting slowly, tracing patterns as deliberate and graceful as calligraphy. Each leaf falls quietly, yet carries the gentle weight of impermanence, reflecting the fragile luminosity of Lady Teishi's own heart, touched by beauty yet destined to fade. During the Heian period, the practice of momijagari, or autumn leaf viewing, flourished. Courtiers wandered hillsides, pavilions, and riversides beneath arching maple branches, composing waka that likened drifting leaves to fleeting love or the delicate transience of life. These moments were quietly recorded in diaries and poems, not as dramatic events, but as serene meditations on nature's cycles. To behold autumn leaves was to engage in reflection as profound as admiring moonlight or plum blossoms. Lady Teishi, wrapped in layers of silk dyed in seasonal hues, stepped into the gardens with others, yet her gaze lingered differently. She noticed the spaces between branches, the soft hush of air, the scent of dry earth beneath her feet. For her, autumn was a time when inner silence deepened. While others recited verses aloud, she held her words within, each falling leaf carrying a fragment of her unspoken longing, her quiet heart mirrored in the fleeting beauty surrounding her. In Chronicles of the Age, a curious tale appears, the story of a single red leaf that never withered. It was said to remain vivid through winter snows and spring rains, defying the natural order. Some believed it marked a tree touched by divine favor, while others whispered it was a sign of a spirit's presence. No such leaf survives in records beyond rumor, yet the idea lingers, an image of endurance in a world defined by change. Lady Teishi may have heard such tales during autumn gatherings, her thoughts moving toward her own fragile constancy. You imagine Lady Teishi pausing by a still pond, where koi stir the mirrored surface with gentle ripples. A single crimson leaf drifts down, landing lightly on the water, carried effortlessly by currents too subtle to see. She watches it float, sensing in its quiet surrender a reflection of her own heart. Her love, constrained by duty and courtly expectation, cannot resist the flow any more than the leaf can fight the stream. Yet there is beauty in that yielding, a calm grace that transforms surrender into quiet radiance. The leaf does not despair. It glows as it drifts. In the Heian Court, courtiers layered robes in seasonal colors, a subtle language of nature and refinement. Deep reds and soft yellows marked the arrival of autumn, blending fashion with poetic sensibility. Lady Teishi's garments mirrored the fiery maple leaves, signaling harmony to those who observed, while concealing deeper resonance. Within these hues lay the echo of a love both fragile and fleeting, intimate yet unseen. Autumn festivals carried poetry along riversides. As boats glided beneath bridges, each poem tied to a drifting leaf. Most would go unread, offered instead to the currents as a quiet release. Perhaps Lady Teishi's own verses were sent this way, dissolving gently into memory, a private love surrendered to time, never to return, yet enduring in delicate presence. The tale of Genji, written by Murasaki Shikibu during this very age, contains vivid descriptions of autumn. Characters pause to admire how moonlight falls on crimson leaves, or how the season colors the tone of their correspondence. These passages remind us how deeply the Heian people wove natural imagery into their sense of identity. To them, autumn was not a backdrop, but a living partner in their thoughts. Lady Teishi's story cannot be told without the leaves, for they gave voice to what she could not speak. You wander along the garden paths, where fallen leaves create a soft carpet, rustling gently underfoot. A breeze lifts them, swirling a small storm of red and gold before they drift quietly to rest. The fleeting dance recalls laughter shared and gone, a cycle of appearing and vanishing. Much like the secret glances Lady Teishi exchanged with her beloved seen only for a moment, then gone before they could be held. The legend of the unwithering leaf becomes a quiet metaphor. Could love endure beyond the relentless cycles of change? For Lady Teishi, perhaps it could, and perhaps it could not. Her affection burned steadily within, never dimming, yet invisible to the world, like that hidden, enduring leaf. Its quiet presence offered both solace and a gentle ache, a private truth unspoken yet deeply felt. Evenings during autumn often saw incense rising within chambers as courtiers gathered to write. Lady Teishi may have sat by candlelight, composing quiet waka. The scratching of her brush across paper mirrored the sound of leaves brushing against one another outside. Her words would not name names or reveal secrets, but those who knew her heart might have sensed the truth between the lines. The page became a place where her affection could fall like leaves, safely scattered, never gathered again. The season moved onward, and the maples shed their brilliance, leaving gardens hushed and bare, broken only by the distant caw of crows. In this quiet, Lady Teishi carried the memory of color within her heart, knowing that even as leaves fell, their impression lingered, shaping the rhythm of her days. So too did her love endure unseen, unnamed, yet shaping her spirit, a presence no one else could witness. You stand beside her, watching the final leaves cling before the wind releases them. One by one, they drift to the earth, surrendered yet serene. Inhaling the crisp, smoky air, she feels both melancholy and calm. The season whispers that what is given to air, earth, or memory is never lost. Unspoken love quietly transforms, enduring softly within the heart. And so, autumn lingers within the Heian Court as a whisper of color, a fleeting vision, a story written not in ink but in drifting leaves. Lady Teishi, surrounded by silence, carries this vision within her, a reminder that even the most fragile beauty can shape a heart forever. The night deepens over the palace, yet one pavilion remains quietly awake, illuminated only by the flicker of a small oil lamp. Within this space, the soft scratching of a brush on paper is the only sound, marking the retreat of Lady Teishi, her silent sanctuary. Here, away from the watchful eyes of the court, her heart finds room to speak. The weight of duty softens into shadows, and her hidden feelings, delicate and forbidden, take form in lines of ink no one else is meant to read. Life in the Heian Court demanded constant vigilance. Every gesture, every word, every movement of a robe could be noted and remembered. To navigate this world, one cultivated restraint, elegance, and subtlety. Yet within her pavilion, secrecy became refuge. Lady Teishi recorded not only the rituals, visitors, and splendors of courtly life, but also the quiet stirrings of her own heart. This practice was not unusual. Women of the Heian period often turned to diaries, poetry, and collections of reflections to express what could not be spoken aloud. Sei Shanagon, serving Empress Teishi, filled the pillow book with wit, keen observations, and fleeting impressions. Her words endure, revealing how women shaped private worlds through language. Diaries became lifelines, tiny pavilions of the self, preserved within ink, carrying both thought and emotion across time. Lady Teishi's pavilion held more than daily records. It sheltered delicate secrets. Her brush lingered over feelings that could not survive exposure affection for a man beyond her reach. Tender moments captured in stolen glances and hidden words. Each stroke offered both release and risk, for to write was to preserve, yet to endanger. Should another see, her silence would shatter, and her future be at stake. Later, historians examining Heian diaries noticed curious absences, pages deliberately cut or lines erased. It is unclear whether the writers themselves concealed confessions or later hands altered the record. These gaps leave only questions, as if love had been penned in ink too fragile to endure. Perhaps Lady Teishi's own diary bore such scars, pages quietly sacrificed to protect feelings that could never be spoken aloud. You imagine her bent over her desk, the lamp's glow painting her face in soft warmth. Her hand moves slowly, her brush dipping into ink, rising again to sweep characters across fine paper. The room is still except for that faint rhythm, like a second heartbeat. Her words fall with the gentleness of autumn leaves, forming verses that hover between prose and poetry. She writes not to be read, but to unburden. Her diary is a companion, a confidant more trustworthy than any court lady, more constant than any ally. Outside, the night wind brushes against the shoshi screens. Bamboo rustles faintly in the garden. She pauses, hearing the world beyond, and feels both fear and comfort. Fear, because any sound might be footsteps approaching. Comfort, because nature itself seems to share in her secrecy. the rustle of leaves masking the rustle of her brush. The content of her words is lost to us, yet we can sense their rhythm through the traditions of the age. Heian diaries were often fragments, shifting between lists, observations, and moments of confession. A single entry might note the color of dawn, the beauty of incense smoke, and then, in a sudden turn, a sigh about loneliness. Lady Teishi's diary may have followed this rhythm, the formal details of courtly gatherings flowing into private grief, then slipping into delicate verses of love that no one was meant to read. In the Heian Court, secrecy was both survival and art. Hidden thoughts were woven into coded waka, exchanged through fans or folded papers, while diaries served as private ciphers, never meant to leave the chamber. Even as Lady Teishi wrote, she must have felt the weight of danger. Diaries could outlive their authors, be discovered, copied, or judged. Sometimes she hesitated, brush poised, unsure whether to reveal or restrain. Her pavilion offered both refuge and quiet confinement. Some Heian diaries have missing pages, hinting that not everything could survive. Scholars speculate these gaps held intimate thoughts, secret loves, quiet frustrations, or sorrow that might tarnish a lady's image. Though absent, these passages speak as powerfully as written words, reminding us that silence itself can convey meaning, carrying the unspoken weight of hearts confined by duty and tradition. Lady Teishi's restraint became a form of writing. Each withheld thought, each pause of the brush, shaped her story as much as the lines she inscribed. Speech and silence intertwined, forming a diary visible only to her, a record of ink and absence, private and enduring within her pavilion. You remain in this quiet chamber, where the soft scent of ink blends with lingering incense. The lamp flickers, shadows dancing gently across the paper. Lady Teishi lowers her brush and closes her eyes, letting her thoughts drift toward the one she cannot name. Her diary holds these tender feelings like a fragile vessel, preserving what must remain secret. Each entry lightens her heart, a private release. Outside, the moon glides over Kyoto's tiled roofs, while within, her pavilion is a hidden world apart from ceremony and politics. Here, she is simply a woman with a heart that aches and a hand that writes, her diary echoing her soul, secret yet enduring. And so, the silent pavilion stands as a symbol of what the Heian women preserved, their unspoken truths, their delicate affections, their inner voices. Some of those voices survived into posterity, like the Pillow Book and the Tale of Genji. Others were erased, their pages lost to fire, to time, or to deliberate silence. Lady Teishi's own words may never be recovered, but the image of her bent over her diary remains soft, patient, luminous in her solitude. The night grows deeper. The lamp burns lower. She sets aside her brush, closes the diary, and slides it into a chest hidden beneath folded robes. Tomorrow, she will smile with grace, move with elegance, and fulfill her duties without falter. No one will suspect what the silent pavilion has heard, what the diary has guarded. Only the pages know. Only the silence remains. The palace gardens of Heian Kyoto stretched wide and serene, filled with ponds that mirrored the sky and bridges that curved like gentle brush strokes across water. Among these bridges, there was one where Lady Teishi sometimes lingered, her steps slowing as though the world itself urged her to pause. This bridge, arched delicately over still waters, became the quiet stage for her briefest and most secret encounters. No words passed between them, no overt gestures, only the hush of presence and the fragile reassurance that silence could hold. In the Han era, bridges were more than passageways. They were thresholds, spaces of transition between one realm and another. To stand upon a bridge was to exist in between, neither fully here nor there, a place where boundaries softened. It was fitting, then, that Lady Teishi's forbidden affection found its expression upon such a structure, where neither palace duty nor private longing held complete claim. The bridge allowed for moments suspended, like dew upon a lotus leaf, glistening until it fell away. Beneath the bridge swam koi, their colors rippling through the reflections of willows and clouds. The Heian courtiers admired koi, not only for their beauty, but also for their grace, their movements suggesting calm endurance. The ponds were carefully designed, stones placed with intention, islands shaped with harmony, each element a reminder of balance. The koi glided soundlessly, and Lady Teishi, standing upon the bridge, would watch them while her heart drifted toward the man who sometimes stood on the other side. The court records tell us that koi were bred in these ponds, prized for their longevity and their symbolic strength. Some believed they carried blessings of perseverance, a fitting emblem for love that survived only in fragments and secrecy. Stories circulated of koi that had lived beyond ordinary years, swimming gracefully long after generations of courtiers had passed. One tale spoke of a golden koi that lingered for more than a century, as though carrying the memory of the palace itself within its shimmering scales. Was it truth or embellishment? No one can say, but such stories carried comfort, suggesting that something fragile might, in its own way, endure. Lady Teishi's bridge moments were never planned aloud, never written into any diary or exchanged through any fan. They were simply found two lives crossing paths in the rhythm of court duties, pausing upon that wooden span for a few breaths longer than necessary. Perhaps a sleeve brushed the railing where his sleeve had rested earlier. Perhaps their eyes met across the koi pond, reflections trembling with the faintest recognition. No more than that. And yet, within the language of silence, these fragments were more precious than any poem. The gardens themselves were designed for such silences. Bridges led to small islands meant for reflection. Pavilions faced the moonlit water. Winding paths guided one toward vistas where contemplation was inevitable. Within this carefully crafted stillness, every glance carried weight, every pause became meaningful. To walk slowly across the bridge was to converse with the world without words, and Lady Teishi's heart spoke in that language. Rain sometimes fell softly over the bridge, dimpling the water until the koi vanished beneath shifting rings. At night, the bridge lay bathed in moonlight, its wooden planks silvered by pale glow. In spring, petals of cherry blossoms floated down, gathering at the edges of the pond like drifting letters never read. Each season gave the bridge new attire, but always it carried the same undertone of waiting, of briefness, of holding something delicate before it slipped away. It is easy to imagine Lady Teishi pausing there at twilight, the hush of the hour deepening the sense of secrecy. She may have rested her hand lightly on the railing, feeling the polished wood warmed by the day's sun. Below, the koi traced circles through water that reflected the crimson and gold of the setting sky. Perhaps across the span, another figure stood in equal stillness, both of them gazing downward, never lifting their eyes fully, yet aware of each other's presence like a candle glowing unseen behind a screen. Bridge became their sanctuary, precisely because it was so ordinary. Anyone could walk there, and thus no one suspected. A pavilion meeting would have been noted, a letter easily intercepted, but the bridge required nothing, no explanation, no defense. It was simply part of the garden, a place where courtiers lingered to admire koi or breathe fresh air. Within that ordinariness, Lady Teishi carved her own quiet world. The tale of the century-old koi drifts back into thought. If a creature could outlast lifetimes, carrying within its graceful body the passage of emperors and poets, perhaps love too could exist beyond the moment, beyond the fragile boundaries imposed by custom. Perhaps it could find expression not in possession or permanence, but in these fleeting crossings upon a bridge over still waters. The koi swam, the moon rose, the lovers passed, and something endured. Even if only in memory. As you imagine this scene, your own breath begins to match the rhythm of the koi below the bridge, slow and flowing. The garden grows still around you, willows brushing the pond with languid touch. The bridge arches gently, holding its secret between the shores. Lady Teishi lingers only a moment, but within that moment her world expands, her heart echoing with the presence she dares not name. When Lady Teishi departs, her steps are deliberate, sleeves gliding like soft clouds across the wooden planks. The koi continue their gentle circles, unbothered, as the bridge lingers behind her, patient for another day, another fleeting crossing. The still waters hold every reflection, preserving the passage of those who wander by, keeping secrets safe. They never speak, yet remember everything, quietly carrying the memory of hearts and footsteps, like a silent witness to fleeting moments of grace. The bridge, like her heart, exists between realms, between silence and confession, between duty and longing, between the permanence of water and the fleeting shadow of those who walk upon it. And as night settles deeper over the palace gardens, the koi glide unseen, carrying with them the quiet story of two souls who met not through words, but through stillness. Inside the palace chambers, night unfolded with a softness that only candlelight could summon. Flames flickered in quiet rhythm, sending shadows to dance across painted screens and polished floors. Each movement of light became a story of its own, shifting forms that whispered of dreams, secrets, and the unseen corners of the heart. Lady Teishi often sat near such light, her gaze steady though her thoughts wandered beyond the walls that enclosed her. Candlelight was both companion and conspirator, carrying within its glow the reflections of all that could never be spoken aloud, not in the Heian Court. Candles were more than practical. They were symbols, tools of divination, and even vessels of destiny. Courtiers sometimes gathered to observe the flame, believing it revealed signs of fortune or warning. A flame leaning strongly to one side could suggest imbalance. A flame that danced wildly might portend disruption. A steady flame promised calm days ahead. To sit with a candle was to read a language not written in ink, but in trembling light. Lady Teishi knew this custom, and sometimes she wondered what her own flickering candle might be trying to confess. Candlelight cast shifting shadows that seemed alive. Painted screens transformed as flames flickered, petals became delicate wings, branches morphed into silhouettes of wandering figures. Each movement was gentle magic, a quiet dance of light and form that filled the room with a soft, ever-changing tapestry, as if the walls themselves were breathing with imagination. The imagination filled the gaps, and in the wavering shadows one could see what the heart most longed for. Teishi, seated quietly with her sleeves arranged like waves of silk, might have seen in those shadows the outline of a figure familiar to her, a form that entered only her heart's vision. Shadows became her secret companions, giving shape to longing she dared not voice. Among the mysteries whispered in court, there were tales of candles that burned endlessly, flames steady through long nights without shortening the wax. These stories carried a sense of wonder, as though the candle were not consuming itself, but simply holding light for those who needed it most. Some believed such candles marked the presence of spirits or carried divine protection. Others suggested they symbolized love, unfading, unwavering, a light that endured even when surrounded by darkness. Whether real or imagined, such tales passed through court corridors like threads of hope, reminding courtiers that some things could defy the ordinary. Lady Teishi may have thought of those endless candles when she sat in solitude. Was her own love like such a flame, hidden from view, yet burning quietly without ever diminishing? It gave her no outward claim, no lasting form, yet it glowed inside her nonetheless, steady as the heart itself. The wax of her days was consumed by duty, but the light within remained, shining where no one else could see. To imagine it never fading was a comfort, like believing that a single candle might guard the night forever. When courtiers performed candle divination, they often gathered in stillness, watching how wax dripped and pooled. The shape of the wax was red like a dream. Some believed it could reveal journeys ahead or describe the fate of a love. Perhaps Teishi once joined such a gathering, her face calm as she listened, though inwardly she wondered whether the wax could betray her heart. She may have looked upon a curve of hardened wax and thought it resembled a bridge or the arc of koi swimming beneath water. The interpretations given aloud were safe, but the meanings in her heart were her own. The chamber air often grew scented with incense, burned alongside candles. The two together created an atmosphere of timelessness, scent weaving through air, light weaving through shadow. Flames glowed warmly against lacquered boxes, their reflections trembling like silent conversations. To sit in such a room was to feel the world pause, as though time itself slowed to match the rhythm of the flicker. Lady Teishi would let her breath fall into that rhythm, each inhale aligning with the steady glow, each exhale softening the weight of secrecy she carried. On certain nights, Candlelight felt playful. Flames wavered as though laughing at unseen jokes. Shadows stretched tall, like actors bowing upon a stage. Teishi herself sometimes allowed a smile, seeing how her own silhouette curved upon the wall, larger than life. There I am, she might have thought, taller than any minister, longer than any sleeve. The humor was quiet, but even a small smile could soften a night. Candlelight invited not only reflection, but also gentle amusement, a reminder that shadows, like people, did not always behave as expected. The Heian nights were long, and candles often burned through many hours. Servants replaced them with care, yet each flame felt personal, unique. To watch one candle burn out was like saying farewell to a silent friend. The last moments of a candle were always poignant. The glow deepened, the flame leaned low, and then it vanished with a whisper. For Teishi, this moment carried metaphor, like the closing of a hidden chapter or the memory of a glance fading into night. Yet the darkness left behind was not empty, for the memory of light lingered in the eyes, just as love lingered in her heart. Not, as you imagine this, you see yourself seated with Lady Teishi. The chamber is hushed, silk rustles softly as she shifts, and the flame before you dances with grace. Shadows stretch long across the walls, gathering secrets into their folds. You breathe slowly, noticing how the flame steadies with your breath, as though candle and spirit are attuned. Around you, silence feels full, carrying not emptiness, but presence. The candle burns on, a reminder that hidden things can glow quietly without ever demanding to be seen. Lady Teishi remains in her stillness, her thoughts unspoken, her heart reflected only in the tremble of light. Shadows drift and reform, carrying with them all the shapes of longing, all the beauty of silence. And as the night continues, the candle's glow becomes part of memory, a small flame kept forever within the stillness of her soul. The winter sky over Kyoto unfolded in shades of silver and pale gray, a vast canopy that promised stillness more than storm. When the first flakes began to fall, the palace grounds shifted into another world, softened by layers of white. Roofs that had once gleamed dark with lacquer now appeared draped in delicate cloth, as though the entire city had been dressed for silence. You imagine walking slowly through those corridors, your breath curling in the cold air, each step softened by snow. The hush around you feels like a blanket drawn close, insulating you from the stirrings of courtly life. In the chronicles of the time, the year 1029 was remembered for a snow that blanketed Kyoto, so deeply that daily activities slowed almost to a halt. Courtiers wrote about how gardens seemed erased beneath layers of white. Paths disappeared, and the Kamo River itself appeared to pause under sheets of ice. For a court so finely attuned to seasonal changes, this snow was not simply weather. It was a profound event that shaped poetry, ritual, and memory. The weight of that snow lingered in records, as if the flakes had been etched into history itself. Lady Teishi, experienced such winters with an inner resonance. The snow spoke to her of solitude, of purity tinged with isolation. Just as the roofs wore white mantles, she too carried the heavy mantle of propriety. Her role in the palace demanded dignity, discretion, and distance. To feel love in secret was like standing at a frosted window, looking out but never opening it. Snow became a mirror of her condition, beautiful, but silent, unyielding, and cold to the touch. Curious tales spoke of snowflakes that defied expectation, hexagonal forms twisting, elongating, or bearing odd angles. Some saw messages from the heavens. Others called them nature's anomalies. Historians still debate whether such shapes truly existed or were poetic inventions. Yet imagining them evokes snow carrying secret messages. Frozen for a moment before vanishing, Lady Teishi watches the snowfall with quiet attentiveness, aware of both beauty and impermanence. Each flake drifts down, settling briefly on sleeves, roofs, and stone lanterns before disappearing. Like the fleeting flakes, her secret glances and whispered poems exist only for a moment, yet leave lasting impressions. The snow teaches that even what is transient can transform perception, layering the world with delicate, ephemeral lives that echo in the heart long after they vanish. The palace gardens under snow took on another life. Bridges that once arched over koi-filled ponds appeared like pale strokes of ink. Trees bent under weight, their branches whispering downward. The vermilion torii at shrines peeked through white layers, as though memory itself were surfacing from sleep. To walk there was to enter a dream where every shape softened, every line blurred. Snow reshaped not only the ground, but also the mind, encouraging slowness, reflection, and a quiet acceptance of what could not be altered. Inside the chambers, the snow pressed against the world like silence made visible. Courtiers gathered near braziers, their conversations hushed by the muffled world outside. The falling flakes seemed to draw all voices downward, encouraging whispers and pauses. Lady Teishi would have written poems during such nights, her brush moving slowly across fine paper. Her words perhaps compared snow to veils, or to the still heart of a hidden truth. She may have captured in ink the paradox of snow, soft yet heavy, beautiful yet confining. Even in stillness, humor has a way of appearing. Snow piling upon the tall roofs sometimes slid down suddenly, sending cascades into courtyards with surprising speed. Servants startled, robes splashed, and the quiet momentarily broke into laughter. Teishi may have allowed herself a smile at such a sight, amused by the way solemn roofs could not always contain their burden. Snow reminded everyone, even the most dignified, that gravity remained undefeated. Legends spoke of snow as a realm between worlds. Some believed that spirits moved most freely through falling flakes, each flake carrying the trace of a soul. To walk through snow was to brush against those who had gone before. The thought gave comfort to some, unease to others. For Teishi, such legends might have heightened her sense of connection to all that was unseen. Snow carried whispers, just as her own heart carried unspoken devotion. To stand in snow was to stand in company. Though no one was visibly there, the roofs of Kyoto in snow formed patterns that seemed both natural and intentional. Each slope held its layer. Each curve created shadows that shifted with moonlight. At night, under clear skies, snow reflected the moon with brilliance, glowing faintly like a second lantern above the city. Lady Teishi, walking within covered corridors, may have paused to see how rooftops shimmered, how her own breath misted upward and joined that pale glow. The entire city became a lantern, burning not with fire, but with frozen light. Snow brings a slow, deliberate rhythm, stretching each step and softening every sound. Lady Teishi feels both weight and relief in this quiet. The weight comes from unending duty, unyielding even as snow melts. The relief comes in permission to pause, to watch flurries descend endlessly without expectation. For these moments, the palace is not filled with demands, but with gentle drifting silence. Roofs hold the snow like folded blankets, each sagging slightly under its weight. The air is crisp, filling lungs with clarity. Flakes continue to fall, softening corners and blurring paths beneath new layers. Every movement is slow, unhurried, leaving traces that vanish almost immediately. Nothing presses upon you except the invitation to witness, to breathe, and to let the quiet wrap around your heart. And as Lady Teishi herself might have felt, the snow becomes both companion and reminder. It speaks of isolation, yet it also offers beauty. It covers roofs and gardens alike, ignoring status, silencing divisions. It insists that everything can be softened, even sorrow, even longing. The snow falls without end, and in its quiet, you find a rhythm that soothes you into stillness, a calm that spreads like white across the roofs of Heian, Kyoto. Spring returned to Kyoto with gentle subtlety, not with abrupt warmth, but as whispers of fragrance riding the soft breeze. The first signs were the delicate plum blossoms, their scent drifting through palace corridors, light yet persistent. Unlike the bold cherry blossoms that would later dominate the season, the plum flower appeared quietly, while winter's chill still lingered. Its early bloom seemed to promise patience, resilience, and a beauty that existed in the margins, understated yet enduring. For Lady Teishi, the plum blossoms carried meanings beyond the season. Their fragrance stirred memories she carefully kept hidden, like letters tucked within layers of silk. The subtle sweetness recalled secret exchanges, fleeting glances, and words too fragile to ever speak aloud. Just as the blossoms opened before the world was ready for warmth, her heart harbored feelings that arrived too quietly, too early, to be expressed. The Fujiwara poets wove plum blossoms into waka as metaphors for longing, loyalty, and impermanence. Blossoms symbolized beauty's persistence through hardship, thriving even amid frost, their scent persisting against the wind. In poetry, fragrance often replaced words, an invisible language between lovers, where petals and aroma whispered truths that letters could never safely convey. Teishi may have found comfort in such imagery. For her, the plum blossoms became allies, expressing what she could not. Their scent lingered in robes, followed her into private chambers, filled the air around her, as if shielding her solitude with sweetness. Perhaps she leaned close to a branch once, inhaling its perfume, and allowed herself to imagine that another stood beside her, sharing the same fragrance. The blossoms turned memory into presence, absence into something nearly tangible. Legends of the plum tree deepened their presence in Lady Teishi's imagination. One story spoke of trees that mirrored the moods of their caretakers, petals shifting hue with the heart's unrest, deep crimson for desire, pale white for sorrow. Witnesses swore they saw such transformations, though none could explain them. To believe was to sense that nature itself listened, that inner life might bloom outward without uttering a single word. If she paused beneath such a tree, Teishi might have wondered what color her own heart would inspire. Would the blossoms betray her secret longing with a sudden crimson, defying the decorum she was bound to observe? Or would they pale, echoing the loneliness tucked beneath her silk layers? Each scenario carried risk, yet also solace, the thought that even in silence, her feelings might find expression through petals and fragrance. Palace gardens lined with plum trees offered paths of quiet reflection. In bloom, the branches scattered white and pink petals like softened snow, memories of winter imbued with scent. Teishi may have wandered slowly along these stone paths, robes brushing the ground, thoughts rising with the blossoms. The trees arched above, guardians of secrecy and renewal, each falling petal carrying an unspoken message, a delicate echo of the heart. The fragrance of plum blossoms also seeped into rituals and gatherings. Incense was often mixed with dried petals, blending memory with tradition. To burn such incense was to release fragrance into the air, as though recalling emotions long hidden. Courtiers who gathered to compose poetry might have sat in a circle, each with a sprig of plum placed nearby, letting the blossoms inspire their verses. Teishi, though bound by restraint, may have added her voice in subtle lines that hinted at more than they revealed not in quiet hours. When the palace grew still, the blossoms became more than decoration. Their fragrance clung to robes hung near windows, to folded papers waiting for ink. Sometimes, on nights when sleep did not come easily, Teishi might have found herself comforted by the faint perfume that lingered, like a ghost of companionship. The blossoms did not question, did not judge. They simply released their scent, night after night, until their petals fell away. The legend of the mood-changing plum tree persisted across generations. Some said such trees grew only in hidden corners of Kyoto, nurtured by families who guarded their mystery. Others claimed the trees no longer bloomed, their magic having vanished with the sorrow of the Heian Court. Yet stories remained of blossoms that shifted shade with the setting sun, their petals holding traces of human feeling. For those who believed, the trees offered proof that the heart could never truly be silenced, no matter how strict the palace walls. You imagine Lady Teishi writing a waka beneath such a tree, brush moving slowly, ink pooling on paper. Her poem might not mention the word love, yet every stroke would carry it. She could compare the shifting blossoms to the restless movement of her own spirit, or to the patience of a heart waiting in silence. The plum's fragrance would linger on the paper itself, scenting her words long after the ink dried. The delicate plum blossoms withstand late frosts, teaching that beauty need not shout to be felt. Their quiet endurance mirrors Lady Teishi's own strength, the grace to carry longing, to turn secrecy into something fragrant rather than bitter. Silence, like blossoms, can bloom. Hidden emotions can still perfume the air. You imagine standing beneath a tree in full bloom. Petals drift gently, brushing shoulders and pooling at your feet. The fragrance wraps around you, soft yet insistent, filling each breath with sweetness. Every petal carries a story, each blossom a secret, and the air itself hums with the unspoken words of hearts long past, delicate and enduring. And in that moment, you understand why Lady Teishi found solace here. The blossoms were her companions, her confidants. They carried her silence and transformed it into beauty. They asked nothing in return, only that she noticed their fragrance, only that she allowed them to remind her of what remained unspoken. The plum blossoms, fragile yet enduring, filled the palace with their quiet truth, an invisible language of love, memory, and resilience. The fragrance lingers even as petals fall. It lingers still, across centuries, across the roofs of Heian Kyoto, across the silence of time. And as you breathe it in, you feel the calm it carries, soothing you into stillness, much as it once soothed Lady Teishi herself. The night in Kyoto unfurled like silk, smooth and luminous, beneath the glow of a round, steady moon. On the Kamo River, the water shimmered with silver light, each ripple catching fragments of the sky, as though the heavens themselves had spilled onto the current. For the aristocrats of the Heian Court, to take a boat along the river on such nights was more than leisure. It was a ritual, a way to align their spirits with the rhythm of the cosmos. Lady Teishi, too, found herself upon such a journey. The boat drifted slowly, guided by attendants with quiet poles, but it seemed almost as though the current moved of its own accord, carrying her through a world both still and alive. The air was cool, brushing her sleeves with a touch that felt like memory. Around her, the night hummed with distant insects, their voices softened by the expanse of water. The moon hung above, steady and unblinking, its reflection wavering across the ripples dot in the Heian era. Moon viewing on the Kamo River was cherished by courtiers who sought beauty in the fleeting and the eternal. They wrote waka to capture the shimmer of moonlight, the sound of oars, the perfume of incense carried across the water. Each journey was not merely an outing, but a dialogue with the cosmos, an acknowledgement of impermanence framed by beauty. Teishi, bound by courtly duties and secrets of the heart, may have found the river both a mirror and a veil. The movement of the boat echoed her own life, guided by unseen hands, carried by currents beyond her control. Love within the confines of the court was a forbidden current, one that promised no harbor, no safe docking place. Yet on the river, she could surrender to the drift, if only for a while. The water, like her heart, knew both freedom and constraint. Its path was never fully its own, yet it shimmered all the same beneath the moon's light. Legends spoke of strange happenings on the Kamo River. On certain nights, it was said, the waters would rise without wind, without storm. Attendants whispered that the river responded to celestial forces, as though answering to the moon itself. Some claimed the phenomenon was a sign of blessings, while others thought it carried messages from unseen spirits. On this night, Teishi might have noticed the water shift in subtle ways, the surface swelling as if stirred by something invisible, a quiet mystery hidden within the calm. The oars moved with gentle rhythm, breaking the river's reflections only briefly before the surface smoothed again. Around her, courtiers whispered poems, comparing moonlight to longing and the river to fate. Fans unfolded softly, catching stray glimmers, while faint perfume drifted from brushed sleeves. Yet Lady Teishi remained inward, her heart composing verses never to be shared. Her secret love shimmered like the moon's reflection, luminous, untouchable, trembling upon water that could not hold it taut as the boat drifted. She may have felt love itself mirrored the river's course. No promised shore, only the fleeting beauty of each moment. The court's rules and rituals stood like riverbanks, shaping her path yet never containing her current. Within these narrow confines, her heart flowed quietly but restlessly, guided by emotions stronger than law yet gentler than circumstance, cherishing each shimmer before it dissolved into the night. The fragrance of plum and pine followed the courtiers even onto the water, blending with the faint scent of damp wood from the boat. Lanterns hung from the bow cast gentle glows, their light competing with the moon's reflection. The flame wavered when touched by the night breeze, yet the moon's glow remained constant, serene. Teishi, gazing upon both, might have wondered which was more like her love, the fragile lantern, trembling yet warm, or the cold moonlight, distant yet eternal dot in her sleeve. Perhaps she carried a folded waka, never given. The words might have compared the river's endless motion to the quiet ache of her heart, the moon's silver face to the watchful presence of her beloved. Yet the poem remained hidden, like the undercurrent beneath the surface, carrying meaning unseen by those above. For Teishi, the act of composing in silence was its own kind of journey, an inner river flowing endlessly. With no need of harbor dot, the rising river lingered in her thoughts. As the boat drifted, she imagined unseen forces beneath the surface tides, spirits, perhaps memories itself. Could the river swell to carry unspoken feelings, lifting hidden emotions toward the sky? The mystery offered comfort. Just as her love remained invisible, yet powerful, the river responded to forces beyond explanation. Bending to the unseen dot above, the moon watched without judgment, casting light evenly over water, boat, and heart. For centuries, courtiers entrusted their secrets to it, sending poems skyward as though it might answer. Teishi joined them silently, offering presence instead of words. The moon's reflection shimmered, blurred by ripples, yet always returned to wholeness. In that endless cycle, she found solace. Love could bend, fragment, or vanish, but its essence endured, like light restored after each ripple. The journey stretched gently into night, unhurried. The river held every sigh and silence. Lanterns glowed on thoughtful faces, while water carried them forward in timeless rhythm. No destination mattered. The voyage itself became the poem, the music, the memory. Lady Teishi leaned into the cool air, letting herself drift, carried not only by the boat, but by the pulse of longing itself. And now, as you close your eyes, you may find yourself upon that same boat. The moon glows above, a silver companion. The water shimmers softly, each ripple carrying you further into calm. The air smells faintly of blossoms, faintly of night. The boat does not hurry, nor does it seek a shore. It drifts as love drifts tender, uncertain, yet always illuminated by a steady, watchful light. You, like Lady Teishi, are safe upon this moonlit journey. There is no need for destination, no need for resolution. The river carries you, the moon comforts you, and the night itself becomes your companion. Slowly, softly, the world quiets, leaving only the sound of water, the shimmer of silver, and the calm that spreads within. The night deepened beyond the riverbanks of Kyoto, and the vast heavens stretched endlessly above. A dome of stars shimmered in quiet constellations, their points of light ancient and eternal, yet always fleeting in the eye of those who gazed upward. For the courtiers of the Heian period, to look at the stars was not an act of science, but of poetry, of metaphor, of longing. Astronomy in those centuries was woven with symbolism, each constellation thought to hold the fortune of a season, the destiny of a life, or the quiet voice of the gods. Lady Teishi, with her heart bound in secrecy, often found comfort in the sky. Beneath its canopy she felt unobserved, her inner life mirrored by the silent constellations that glowed like hidden poems. It was said that during the 10th and 11th centuries, courtiers consulted the stars to divine not only political fates, but also matters of love. Yet such readings were rarely scientific. They belonged more to the world of symbols, where a single shining star could embody an unspoken feeling, and the faint arc of a constellation could mirror the curve of a longing heart dot. After long days of ceremony, she would withdraw to her chamber. In the quiet glow of flickering candles, Lady Teishi let her imagination rise beyond roof beams into the infinite night. In dreams, she walked among the stars, sleeves brushing radiant paths of silver, steps light across unseen bridges. The palace and its endless duties could not follow her there. In dreams, she moved toward freedom, toward love, beneath the gentle companionship of the night sky. Curiously, Heian-era records note a constellation that appeared in court calendars but vanished after a single night. Poets and priests wrote verses mourning the lost shape, yet historians still debate whether it was a true astronomical event or a poetic invention. Perhaps the courtiers imagined it to give form to loss, or perhaps the stars themselves conspired in silence. Either way, the disappearance became a mirror for fleeting beauty, much like the secret affections Lady Teishi carried seen for a moment, then lost to memory. For Teishi, such stories resonated deeply. Love, too, could vanish as suddenly as a star from the heavens present one night, gone the next, leaving only verses in its place. Perhaps in her private writings, she likened her affection to that vanished constellation, a brightness too fragile to endure the gaze of the court, a light meant only for hidden hours. Yet even if the form disappeared, the memory of its glow lingered, just as her heart held on to moments unspoken and unseen. The stars were not merely distant fires, but companions of the mind. In Heian poetry, they symbolized patience, longing, and eternity. Courtiers gazed upon them during late-night gatherings, composing waka to capture their cold yet consoling presence. Lady Teishi may have composed silently to herself, verses about stars separated by distance, about light reaching across unimaginable voids, about beauty shining, though never to be touched. Each word, though unspoken, brought her closer to a truth her heart cherished not as she drifted into sleep beneath the stars. The boundaries of her world softened. The palace corridors, the strict ceremonies, the countless obligations, they dissolved into a dream where she walked freely. The stars above became lanterns guiding her path. She could wander endlessly, her beloved walking beside her without fear. No watchful eyes of courtiers, no whispering tongues. Only the soundless expanse of the universe, gentle and welcoming. In dreams, she was no longer confined. She was infinite, as boundless as the sky itself. The mystery of the vanished constellation lingered, much like the mysteries of the heart. Was it swallowed by the night, or by memory? Did the heavens shift in a way unseen since, or was it only a metaphor for impermanence? Teishi might have smiled softly at the thought, finding solace in ambiguity. For love, too, is ambiguous, both real and imagined, present and hidden. Its truth was not measured by permanence, but by its brightness, even if only for a moment. On certain nights, courtiers gathered in palace gardens for star viewing, spreading mats upon the grass, pouring sake into shallow cups, and composing verses that echoed the constellations above. Quiet voices mingled with the scratch of ink on paper, sighs rising like prayers toward the heavens. Teishi may have joined in body, yet her spirit remained elsewhere. Her true communion with the stars occurred in stillness, when the palace slept, and she alone wandered among the constellations in dreams in Heian writings. Stars carried rich symbolism. Some likened them to dewdrops scattered across the sky, others to wandering yet eternal souls. Teishi may have believed that, though her earthly love was constrained, it might endure among the stars. If forbidden in life, it could exist in memory, in dream, in the vast quiet of night. The stars judged no one. They shone with a steady, impartial tenderness, offering solace to those who looked upward. Lying on her bedding, shutters partly open to glimpse the heavens, she let her breath slow with the night's rhythm. Constellations blurred into a soft mist of light. In that haze, she wandered freely, no longer Lady Teishi of the court, but a woman beneath endless stars, unbound and unafraid, her heart following the quiet glow above. And so, night after night, her secret journeys continued. They were not recorded in chronicles, nor whispered in court corridors, but they lived within her. Dreams beneath the stars became her sanctuary, a realm untouched by politics or custom. Each star was a companion, each constellation a hidden verse. And though one vanished from history, countless others remained, reminding her that love and freedom, though fragile, could always find a place to shine, even if only in dreams. Rest now beneath that gentle sky. The stars shimmer softly, patient and unwavering, waiting for your gaze. Close your eyes and drift among them. Like Lady Teishi, walk freely beneath their endless light, each step gentle, each breath calm. The world below fades, the heavens surround you, and you float quietly, carried into sleep by their tender glow. The night had reached its deepest hush, when even the faintest rustle of silk seemed like a ripple across a still pond. The palace grounds rested beneath a pale moon, its silver glow softening the outlines of rooftops, trees, and corridors into dreamlike silhouettes. Incense smoldered in a quiet brazier, its fragrance curling upward in threads of unseen poetry, weaving through the night air. The aroma lingered like memory itself, subtle, elusive, impossible to hold, yet unforgettable once touched. Lady Teishi often found herself attuned to such fragrances. The art of Koto, once so carefully practiced in the halls of Heian Court, was never merely about the smoke of woods and resins. It was about listening to the scent, letting it speak in ways words could not. Tonight, the incense whispered of endings that were not losses, of silence that was not emptiness. It reminded her of her secret affections, woven like the smoke present real, but destined to disperse into the larger sky. The moonlight brushed her chamber floor with a sheen of pale ivory. Each beam seemed like a gentle river, carrying with it echoes of laughter, sighs, and hidden verses that had once passed through her heart. Within the hush of the night, she did not feel sorrow. Instead, she felt the serenity of acceptance, the recognition that love, even forbiddens, had been a truth within her life, as natural as the drifting stars or the changing seasons. The records of Heian times often dwelt on ceremonies, politics, and dynasties. Yet beneath those chronicles, softer currents moved. Private diaries, scattered waka, hidden notes slipped between fans. They revealed what the official scrolls never did, the humanness of the courtiers, their quiet desires, their secret longings. Some of those words survived, while others were erased, like faint brushstrokes washed away by rain. Teishi's own voice, whether preserved or not, belonged to that river of silence, a current felt though not always seen. The night deepened further. The wind hushed among the pines outside, their needles swaying in a rhythm older than memory. In her solitude, Lady Teishi imagined her love as a reflection upon still water. It had shimmered once, vibrant, undeniable, yet it was destined to fade as ripples spread, as time moved onward. She did not resist. She simply allowed it to pass, honoring it as one honors the scent of incense felt in the moment, treasured in recollection, let go with grace. Byōdō-in's bronze bells once sent their deep resonance across the night, a sound that transcended the physical. Though the echoes have long since faded, their memory lingers, subtle yet enduring. Love, much like those bells, never truly disappears. Its vibrations persist, shaping the silences that follow. Lady Teishi felt this presence as she reclined beneath the gentle moonlight, her sleeves folded with care. In that quiet glow, she sensed the lasting pulse of emotion, invisible yet palpable, a reminder that some connections endure beyond time and sight. Quietly echoing through memory, the quiet palace corridors carried no footsteps now. The court, with all its rituals and watchful eyes, had given way to sleep. Only the eternal elements remained, the sky, the moon, the faint fragrance of incense, the soft glow of memory. Within this space, her secret became timeless. It no longer mattered whether it had been hidden or forbidden, whether it was written in diaries or erased from pages. It lived in the essence of the night itself, as much a part of Heian's legacy as any temple, poem, or festival. The Heian world, with its delicate arts and refined rituals, had always embraced impermanence. A falling cherry blossoms, the fleeting song of a Koto string, the passing of a single moonlit night, all were cherished precisely because they could not endure. Lady Teishi's love belonged to this same fabric of ephemera. It was her petal, her note of music, her moonbeam across the floor. It came, it shone, it faded, and it remained within her heart as something infinitely precious. The incense finally thinned into silence. The moon began to tilt toward dawn, its silver slowly paling into a softer glow. Night prepared to take its farewell, offering its final gifts. The fragrance of air cooled by shadow, the lingering hush of the palace, the echo of verses unspoken. Teishi, still and calm, received these gifts with gratitude. She knew the night would end, as all nights must, yet its essence would return again, in the next dusk, the next rising moon, the next quiet dream. And so the love she carried, though hidden, though never named aloud, found its home in that eternal cycle. Not in the chronicles of history, but in the quiet rhythm of the seasons, the endless turning of time, the gentle farewell of every night into dawn. Now, as you rest with these images, let yourself drift into the same silence that surrounded Lady Teishi. The palace is gone, the centuries have passed, but the essence of night remains unchanged. The moon still rises, the incense of memory still curls upward, and love, in its quietest form, still lingers. You, too, carry within you stories unspoken, dreams untold, feelings that cannot always find words. Let them rest tonight, just as she allowed her own heart to rest. Feel the air grow softer around you, like the hush of silk moving across polished wood. Imagine the stars fading slowly into dawn, their light lingering in your mind even as your eyes close. You are safe here, in this space between waking and sleeping, between memory and dream. Every breath you take carries you deeper into rest, like a boat gliding across calm waters, steady, unhurried. Gentle dot as Lady Teishi's story dissolves into silence, so too can your day dissolve. Release it gently, without grasping, without effort. Allow yourself to float, supported by the night itself, as though the entire sky is holding you in its arms. Good night, dear listener. Sleep peacefully, and may your dreams be kind, soft, and filled with quiet beauty. Until we meet again in another story, another night, another gentle journey, rest well, and good night. End of script. Thank you for listening, everyone.